who knows how well it will go. Hello friends, I'm Jordan, and the first video on this channel was posted on February 11th, 2015, making this channel officially 10 years old, which is absolutely wild and crazy. There were so many points throughout the 10 years where I really didn't think that this channel would continue, would survive. Because we are still here 10 years later, I wanted to take the next year, because I do fully intend to be here still in a year. We're gonna have some co-hosts. I'm sitting on the floor, which is, you know, the dog zone. So because I do intend to still be here next year, I thought that it would be like both here as in this YouTube channel, but also here as on the planet, you know, like in life. That got very dark very quickly. I thought that we could look back on the last 10 years and reflect together and look at what has changed in my channel, in my content, because there's been some ups and some downs. Like, we've been on a roller coaster. I did not come up with this idea per my own little noggin and my own little brain. I was actually inspired by quite a few people that I follow. Kayla from Books and Lala just celebrated her 10-year anniversary. I have some other friends, Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, who celebrated her 10-year last year. And then I think this year, Mari from My Name is Mayonnaise is celebrating her 10-year anniversary. So a lot of people that I started on this platform with are entering like that decade milestone. And I really was inspired by a lot of like the reflection and talking points and video concepts that all of these people have done or are going to be doing in the next year, that I was like, I would really like to do that too, because I'm trying to reinvigorate my channel. I love being here and I've been away from it for a long time, but I would really like to come back to it and be a consistent and regular uploader to things that I have never been quite great at. We'll get into that a little bit later. In order to like segue myself into that era of my BookTube channel, what better way to do that than with this year-long celebration of the Jordan Journals. I don't know that I've ever stuck with a hobby for 10 years. This is the most consistent and longest hobby I've ever had in my life. So I really wanted to memorialize the moment here with you all, and I'm not really sure what this video will be. I have some notes and I have some ideas, but like I don't really know where we're gonna go here. So we're gonna talk through the last 10 years and we're going to discuss like what each year looked like and where I was and like how my content was. I don't really know what else to make of this video other than, if you are still here and you've been here for 10 years, thank you so much. Words are failing me. I immensely appreciate that you are still watching my content now, because it has been, from like a viewer standpoint of things, nothing that would like make you want to stay. I just decided to post YouTube videos one day because I saw a bunch of other people doing it. The early 2010s was the pinnacle of YouTube and everybody was doing it in like various forms of community. Found the book version of YouTube, the book community, and I knew that I needed to be there. And so after watching one booktuber's content, Reagan from Peru's Project, was so obsessed with everything about it that I made a channel for myself. And I said, that's a hobby I'm going to do. And I'm going to just put myself on the internet and see what happens. As I mentioned, I'd like this to be a year-long celebration, a year-long reflection time for us. And so I will be doing I'm going to attempt to be doing a video each month. I have some ideas. I'm thinking like redoing some tags, redoing some vlogs, doing like sit-down videos of my top 10 books of all time perhaps, or like maybe sit down about what I read, like what it looked like as a reader 10 years ago versus what I look like a reader now, what I haven't read in 10 years, maybe rereading some of my favorites. You know, I don't want to be too ambitious. This is something that I've only been consistent with for 3 weeks. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but these are some ideas that I am percolating in my brain. I do at some point want to do a 10 years on BookTube Q&A style video. I haven't done a Q&A here in many years. I have been so inactive on this channel for such a long time. Excuse me. And not only like inactive, but also just inconsistent, that it feels kind of weird to be like, I'm celebrating 10 years of a hobby on a platform that I haven't consistently or actively engaged with since 2020. Just like a weird thing to be celebrating, because I'm coming back or I'm attempting to come back and be like, hey, here's my channel. Look at me putting all this time and effort back into it. And also celebrate me in my 10 years of kind of being here. And with that too, I feel that like the lifespan of my channel looks a little bit different. It does and it doesn't. In the aspect of there are so many people who started content around the same time that I did that do not make content anymore. There were so many points in this journey to getting here where I could have easily done that. I've always been called back to it for whatever reason. Can we not wrestle with the whale right now, please? So before we move into the walkthrough down memory lane of the last 10 years, let's look at Jordan of 2015 and compare and contrast some of the differences here. In these early videos, you can barely hear a single word that I am saying. I am speaking so softly and so quietly because I did not want anybody in the house to know that I was doing this. This was like my secret project that I wasn't comfortable or willing to share with anybody. So I'm barely speaking above a whisper. As you can tell, my hair is very blonde. It actually goes on to get more blonde a few years later than when this was filmed. Heavy makeup, lots of makeup. There was not a video that I filmed that didn't have a full beat before sitting down in front of the camera. And today, like physically today, and also just in general, the time of, today as a concept, I don't wear much makeup. Makeup is not something that I feel required to put on in order to do this. Like, I don't think that we're in that same state where you're expecting me to have a full 2016 style beat on my face. And so I just look very different. Definitely also looking 10 years older. Do I look more haggard and more tired and more weathered and beaten by life? Because that is how I feel. In my soul. This Jordan didn't know what was coming. This Jordan was 2015. She was 22. Oh my God, she's such a baby. She was 22. And she thought she knew everything. And she knew nothing. She, in fact, knew nothing. We are for sure not the same girl, but we do still both really like to read. And we both really like community and the internet and those things coming together in the one place that is BookTube. 10 years ago, I didn't have official bookshelves. I had this, it was IKEA, and it was like a built-in system that you could design yourself around my bed. For the most part, my books were just all over my room in whatever nook and cranny I could find to place them because there wasn't any designated home for books in my room. That meant that when I tried to film YouTube videos initially, I couldn't film in front of my books because they were suspended in the air. At this time, I would probably say I owned maybe around 100-ish books. My collection was very interestingly curated in that a lot of the books I owned were books that I had to purchase for school. I was in honors in AP English in high school, and I was required to purchase books for summer reading. They didn't send us home with copies the same way you'd get during the school year. Also had started to acquire some things on my own. Like, I had gotten into Twilight and I had those books, and same with Harry Potter, and I had those books. I had the staples of what was popular in high school. So 2006 to 2010. I was still reading a lot of Rick Riordan. I was still reading a lot of Cassandra Clare. I was really sticking with these staples. That's what my bookshelf looked like. They were assigned reading from school, the staples of every teenager from 2010, and anything that was a book to movie adaptation in 2013. So naturally, without having bookshelves to sit in front of to film books, I sat on my floor in front of the window. I didn't have lights. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have a tripod. I didn't have anything like that. I sat as close to my wall in this, the space between my bed and the wall was probably maybe 1.5 to 2 feet. I would just cram myself in there in order to fit in front of the window. I had a ledge on the window, so I was able to open the blinds all the way and prop my phone on the ledge to film, and it was in front of my bed. It kind of gives vibes of this. You could often see how messy my room was around me. Sometimes I didn't make an effort to make my bed or put my clothes away or clean up the back of my door or close my closet doors. That's how I filmed everything up until I got my bookshelves. I did have like a color change in my room. We painted it gray, we changed the bedding, made it a little bit more mature because the giraffe themed room was from high school. In terms of how many books I own now, I think I counted recently, the books I have here range around the 300 number. And I've also unhauled quite a lot of books in the last 10 years. So my number from where I started to where I'm at now hasn't inflated dramatically. I feel like a lot of people join BookTube and instantly start hauling tons and tons of books and amass a very large amount very quickly. And while I did start doing that, I've never been a person who can justify spending hundreds of dollars on books for video purposes. Once I got the library card, it was actually life-changing. But before that, I would buy books on sale. I would buy books from sites and companies that I no longer shop from anymore. I would read typically what was ever on my TBR, what I owned, whatever I got for Christmas or my birthday. If I was buying a new release from like a series that I really liked. But I wasn't immediately collecting hundreds of books in the way that a lot of booktubers do when they first join. So I do really appreciate my past self for that. I know I was still spending quite a bit of money on books, but I know it wasn't at the level of what some people. 100 to 300 isn't really a bad ratio. I'm not too mad about that. That means in 10 years, I only acquire 200 books. That's not that bad. That's a comparison of how many books I've owned in 2015 compared to now. Reading habits wise, 10 years ago, I was reading about a book a week, around the 50 mark. Sometimes I would dip into like the upper 60s to low 70s, but about a book a week was pretty on track for my reading. Last couple of years, if I read 20 books in a year, we're considering that a win. So my reading has definitely slowed down. I think there's a lot of factors into why that may be. I've never been a person to be able to read 100 books or 100 books plus in a year. I envy them immensely, but it has not been me. It's not my story or my journey, unfortunately. As far as how I film, back then I was using my phone, my iPhone. We were just getting to the point of iPhone capability where the video quality was decent enough to make content from. So I made my own tripod out of a plastic cup. I cut some notches in the side and a little window in the front so I could see the screen through it. And eventually I got a Sony something that I've been filming on ever since. Here's what my Bookstagram looks like. I don't think I started this in 2015 at the same time that I started my channel. This might be a feed from a couple of years later, but this is the earliest that I can show you of my Bookstagram account versus what it looks like now. And I have not consistently posted on this account in a very long time, but the color scheme, you know, like it's different. We can agree that it's different. 10 years ago, the kind of books that I was reading were a lot of book movie adaptations, a lot of YA, a lot of very popular YA, a lot of like, well, I started with Cassandra Clare and Twilight, so I'm going to naturally gravitate towards these other authors that were up and coming about that time. I don't think that like there's anything that I didn't read then that I do read now or vice versa. A lot of what I read in my adolescence and as a teenager were my mom's books. So I was reading Danielle Steele and Nora Roberts and Nicholas Sparks. I was already reading like adult women's fiction, and moving into YA in BookTube was actually a change for me. It was a departure from what I was normally reading, and I feel like now as an adult, I'm not coming back to those authors by any means, but I'm coming back to like those kinds of stories. I'm feeling myself gravitating back towards more adult titles and away from like a lot of the young adult things that I had been reading for the last 10 years. And I've talked a lot about this in many videos over the many years on BookTube, but like I felt like for a while I didn't know what I liked, and I was like, do I hate reading? Like, do I actually hate reading? What do I like anymore? Because nothing was good. I was not having a lot of success with anything. And I think a big part of that is I was so focused on reading like the YA titles still, because that's what I read right before joining BookTube and what I read for the majority of like those first couple of years. But then I started to age up, and it never occurred to me that like my reading should age up too, because I'd had so much success with YA and I had loved YA so much that I thought, surely it's not that. That's not the problem. I'm the problem. I just hate everything. But in reality, like looking back and reflecting on it, I really think that I needed to just move into more adults. And maybe I could have solved a lot of the problems that I was having 4, 5, 6 years ago with my reading that really deterred me from wanting to participate. As I mentioned before, in 2015, I was doing a lot of reading of my own owned books, things that were on my TBR, things that were in my bedroom, things that were readily accessible to me. Now a major portion of my reading is actually through the library. I almost exclusively use the library for reading nowadays, which is so funny because I never thought 10 years ago that I would be exclusively a library user, but I very rarely buy a book these days. Because I started my channel in February of 2015, 2015 was like a really nice full year that I got on the platform. And looking through my content and like what I was doing at the time, it was a lot of like the staples of wrap-ups and TBRs, but I was doing a lot of standalone book reviews or like book talks. At the time I called them book rants. And after a couple of years of that, I rebranded the series idea because I felt that everybody was assuming that I hated every book that I read because people weren't actively watching them. And I thought, well, maybe it's because they think I'm ranting about all of these books and I don't actually like them. Everything is sat down in front of my bed. I did do a challenge. I did the Bean Boozled challenge with my friends. I did some adaptation things like for Insurgent or 50 Shades of Grey. So I was doing some like book to movie things. But everything was sitting in front of my bed. I did my first bookshelf tour ever that year too, where I made a very precarious video of me standing on my bed trying to film the shelves above my bed. A lot of big booktube staples. And then later on in the year, I started doing my top 5 Wednesday videos. I did my first ever most anticipated releases video that fall. And that was the first time that I ever like actively looked for new releases and like looked into the future to see what I would potentially like to read and not just go into a bookstore and pulling things off of shelves that I thought looked or sounded interesting. Like that was the first thing that for me that I had never done before. Did a whisper challenge with another one of my friends. Then at the very end of the year, I got my very first bookshelf. I had finally a place to like sit in front of to film, and I felt like I elevated my content, elevated my persona online because I had a real bookshelf to sit in front of. This year is also like a really interesting year for like me as a person because I started the year working 3 jobs. I wasn't in school. I had taken a break from college. I was in between like my 2 college eras. That fall, I did go back to school. That presented like a whole different kind of challenge to juggle reading, homework, class, content. Like it was a lot that I did not ever really get a handle on. I struggled with school and booktube the entire additional 3 years that I was in school. One of my favorite books that I discovered in 2015 were Illuminae, The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, The Martian by Andy Weir, The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hodgkin. I found Sarah J. Maas this year. I discovered the Lunar Chronicles this year. So I had a lot of really big wins that I would still consider to be favorites. And in this year, I read 51 books. In 2016, I really started to find community and friendships and things. I had started participating in readathons and like bookish game spaces. I had been able to comment on enough people's videos to like have friendships being made, and it was just like a really innocent time for me in booktube because everything felt like so new and so fresh, and I felt like a little bit more comfortable in talking to the camera, so I felt more engaged in the content and more engaged in what I was doing, and it just felt like I was hitting a good like stride content wise. I wasn't great at editing yet. I didn't have like a good lighting situation yet. I still didn't talk super eloquently about books. I still don't talk super eloquently about books, but I was feeling more confident in that I could put a video together and it would look nice. So it gave me more confidence to like engage in the community because I felt that I had something to offer the community. Oh, Pottermore was like a big thing at this time. I did the sorting hat ceremony. I found Book Outlet for the first time and started to order things from there. Sarah J. Maas really had me in the largest chokehold ever, and I started doing tons of content surrounding Sarah J. Maas novels, and that kind of felt like it became my identity for a really long time. I also did book battles, which was hosted by a friend of mine at the time, Kayla, from Kale's Corner. That was a whole lot of fun. I started doing this series called Hyper Gripe, where I would read really hyped books on BookTube and then tell you if I thought it was worth your time and money. Some really fun things that I hadn't done before, like more concept things that weren't just sit down reviews, TBRs or wrap-ups and tags. This is also the first year that the only year that I went to BEA and BookCon. BEA and BookCon were in Chicago that year. Didn't know a single person going, but I so badly wanted to go because I knew that there would be people there that I could make friends with. And I wanted the experience. I live in a suburb of Chicago, and I just felt that if I did not go, I would have always regretted not going. So it was a very expensive fee at the time for me to go. I didn't know a single person there. I didn't know what I was doing. I can't believe that I got approved to go, but I went to BEA and I went to BookCon and I met some of my friends that I still talk to today. I've seen them get married. We'll see them have kids. And I just can't believe that like these people that I talk to every day, I met nearly 10 years ago at a book event that I almost didn't go to, that I had to hype myself up to go to so bad. I really got into the video content side of things for readathons this year, daily challenges for the biannual bibliothon, which I had never done before. So like I was doing video challenges that forced me to be creative and like do things differently. And that led right into BookTubeathon that summer as well, of which I also did all of the video challenges and posted all of those. So it was like pushing me to be a little bit more creative with my content that I had not been up until this point. Still not vlogging yet, but I'm doing challenge videos. So I'm doing something a little bit out there. But my very first vlog comes in the fall of 2016 for the Harry Potter release day for The Cursed Child. I went and did that. BookTube scavenger hunt was a thing that had happened this year that I participated in. Man, 2016 was so much fun. I did so many fun things. Participated in the LM traveling coloring book, which was also like a fun thing that we were doing at the time. I got my first ARC that year from a friend of mine on BookTube, Sarah Ella. I got her ARC for Unblemished. I was actually thanked in the acknowledgments of that book too. So like, that's a fun little piece of history. Got a second bookshelf so that I was able to sit in front of 2 bookshelves, and I just felt like I'd really elevated my entire being at that point. I'm looking through here and I'm very proud of a lot of the things that I participated in and how outside of my comfort zone I pushed myself. I won a BookTubeathon challenge that year. I read 78 books that year, and I found some favorites. I found Colleen Hoover, who I would not say is a favorite today, but at the time she was a favorite. So I found some Colleen Hoover. I read Libba Braid, The Diviners for the first time. I discovered Maggie Hall's series, The Conspiracy of Us, which I loved, and The Legacy of Kings book, Blood of Gods and Royals, is the series named by Eleanor Herman, which I loved. I found the Sweet series by Wendy Higgins, which I loved. A lot of these things I would not recommend anymore, but these were like pinnacles of my channel. I read A Court of Mist and Fury that year. That like took over my entire and Queen of Shadows. That was my personality for 2016. So moving into 2017, I was starting to do some fun things like series I'm going to finish. I was doing more tags. I was starting to do TBRs and plans. I would include even more non-reading content. So like the movies that I was going to see in the theaters, because I was really into movies and at the theater at this time. A lot of like media, not just books, but just like I was consuming a lot of media and talking about all of it in whatever way I could. I did some unhauls. Try a chapter tag for the first time happened that year. I did some conspiracy theory videos for the last book of the ACOTAR series. Family Feud was a thing that happened on BookTube that I participated in. That was really fun. And then this summer was a really rough summer for me, like personally outside of the internet. And my content looks like it's doing well still. Like I participated in the BookTubeathon again, and this is my first time doing daily vlogs, which I'm very proud of myself. They're some of my favorite things to go back and watch because the way I edited them was so top tier in comparison to anything that I had done before. And I am just so proud of like what little baby Jordan was doing here. This is the first time that BookNet Fest happened, which is crazy. My friends Sam from Thoughts on Tomes and Madi from My Name is Marinez started BookNet Fest in Orlando, and I went to that for the first time. We went to Harry Potter World to celebrate 19 years of Harry Potter. That's like my first big vlog that I made, and I was really excited about that. One of my first times vlogging in public too, like actively walking around Disney or Universal with the camera, like talking to it. So that was a big thing that I had to overcome. First like collab video with everybody at BookNet Fest, and we did the drunk book tag, which is another thing that we as a group love to go back and watch and make fun of because we're so silly. Did the YA BookTube Awards. Like there were so many things happening in the community, and like what a great year. Personally, this was not a great year. I can see that like towards the end, my content kind of did not continue doing so great. And what had happened was I moved out of my parents' house and my books were still at my parents' house. So it became very hard to film content when I lived somewhere and my books lived somewhere else. Then I had to batch content in a way that I hadn't really done before because I was only going over there 1 to 2 times a week. If I didn't film when I was there, I wasn't going to put up videos. So I had to really become very thoughtful and planning heavy with my content in a way that I had never been before and that I'm not good at. So I really struggled with like how to balance my time that I had with the books to make content, enjoy filming. Because at that point, I just felt like I was rushing through filming, rushing through things to have something to upload later. It was a weird time. And that year I read 54 books. And some of my favorites from 2017 were things like Christina Lauren. I found the Sweet Filthy Boy book, Wild Seasons, and then Geekerella, The Progeny, Shadow and Bone that year. I read Truth Witch that year. This is a big year. Moving into 2018, I changed the way that I did my YouTube thumbnails for this year, where I picked a color for every month and like did everything in that color scheme, which is not what I had been doing up until this point. And looking at my channel, it's visually so appealing and I love that I was doing this. It's so cool. It's so fun and I really enjoyed this concept. The first time I did reacting to old content, where I reacted to my first book haul. I also started going to book signings this year. So I like went and saw Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I went and saw Morgan Matson, Susan Dennard, Bridget Kemmerer. This was like that first year that I really got into book signings and going to listen to authors speak about their books. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. And I also got really into Marvel. I was doing some Marvel content, which I was so afraid to do because I didn't want to be found by like the comic bros. I didn't want them to find the content, but I really wanted to talk about these things that I was really heavily invested in and see that like my content is starting to like, we're not quite struggling yet, but a little bit. You know, I'm still pretty proud. I'm putting out a good number of videos each week or each month. I'm putting out like 5 to 6 videos a month, which I could only dream of doing today. Went to BookNet Fest again, and we went to Disney that year, and that's the year that everybody that was visiting from the UK came, and we had a bunch of booktubers from the UK come, and they got to go with us to Disney, and that was really fun. And finally, my bookshelves moved to the house with me, so I was able to finally film whenever I wanted. That was a little bit of a game changer, and by this point, I had lights, I had a camera, I had these bookshelves. I felt that I was going to be unstoppable. My personal life was like a complete and absolute disaster. I was in the worst place I've ever been in my life. It does get worse. This is the beginning of the end. In 2018, though, I did have a really big personal win. I graduated from college that year. I was officially done with school. And so then I was panically applying to everything I possibly could for 6 months because I graduated and it took me 6 months to get a job. In 2018, I read 62 books, so I'm still not doing too terrible. And I found some favorites. More Christina Lauren, Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, The Roomies. I read the last book, Obsidio, from the Illuminae Files. I read The Last of the Wild Seasons, Wicked Sexy Liar. I read The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter, which I really enjoyed. I read Fury Born, which I've never continued with, but I remember loving it at the time. And I read the Katie McGarry series, Nowhere But Here, also Thunder Road. I'm still having a good reading time, but I was really struggling like off camera with everything, absolutely everything. Moving into 2019, I can definitely see that my content is slowing down. Like I'm looking at here and we're not getting as many videos each month. Towards the end of the year, I started grouping content together because I didn't have anything to post. So I did like July, August, and September wrap-ups together, and then like October, November, and December wrap-ups together because I wasn't reading enough to sustain monthly wrap-ups. And I also just like could not compose myself enough to do this like monthly. So when I was having a really good day, I would film whatever I could, and then that would be what I'd have for like the next several months to upload. So there's many months here where I uploaded like 1 to 2 things just because and they were probably late. Didn't have it in me. I moved back to my parents' house this year. So I had my books, I had my lights, I had my camera, I had my setup, but life outside of BookTube was still like really, really, really hard. So 2019, we're still in the thick of the bad times. And I also think that this is the year that my hair gets to be the blondest and the longest that it's been. In 2019, I read 67 books. And some of my favorites from that year were found Riley Sager with Lock Every Door. I found Tessa Bailey with Fix Her Up, Sylvain Neuvel's Themis Files. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six this year. So I found Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read some more Christina Lauren, my favorite Half Night Stand and The Unhoneymooners, and Bridget Kemmerer with A Curse So Dark and Lonely. So I was still having a good reading time. Like, these are still books that I love. Now we move into 2020, which had so many challenges for it. 2020 was a really big year for, I think, a lot of people for many multitude of reasons. But I went out of the country for the first time in 2020. I went to Cabo, and the day that we landed and went through customs in the US from our trip to Cabo for our friend's wedding, the next day was the day that the airport lines were hours long. I went back to work, and a week later I was furloughed. So I was off of work for, I think, like 8 weeks. I was so mentally unwell. I went into that time unwell, and it got so much worse. I downloaded TikTok, which caused so many other problems for many, many years down the line. It was the first time that I was really invested in the world landscape in that way, and I didn't know how to properly balance being informed with my own mental sanity. And I am still struggling with that. That's something that I'm still trying to learn here 5 years later. Trying to be informed and not feeling like privileged by the ability to turn it off and escape into hobbies was really a struggle for me. I felt so guilty doing that I just like spent all of my time the internet in a very unhealthy and unproductive way that I had not experienced before. I've always been very invested in the internet and very like chronically online, but 2020 was different, and it was so unhealthy. Because of that, like, my content like really just took a nosedive. I was doing pretty well at the beginning of the year. I also had a rebrand in 2020. I had a color aesthetic rebrand that I'm still rocking today. This is also the year that we started the House Salt Book Club, which is really fun. We're still doing that today. I do that with my really good friends Connor from Connor O'Brien, Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, Mari from My Name is Marinez, Kayla from Kay Charisse, and Paige from Minimal Bookie. Tier ranking became a thing that happened and was super prevalent in the internet space that year. So I did some tier ranking of my favorite books. That was fun, and I enjoyed that. I can fit all of the content from June to December on one page because I uploaded like 6 videos in that time frame. Part of the reason that I was doing so terribly is because I worked in healthcare. I could not escape the pandemic in any way. Work was really hard. Home was really hard because I was living with my parents again. The internet was really hard because of the world. And so like this was just like such a rough year. I decided I hated everything about everything. I'm like, I hate reading. I hate the books I'm reading. I don't know what I like anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. I had a whole identity crisis at the end of 2020. And I was just like, I can't do any of it anymore. I just can't. 2020 was also the year that I started playing Among Us with my friends, and we would stay up until like 2 a.m. and play Among Us for like 8 hours. And it was so much fun. I look back on those days so fondly. That was such a great time. I did read books that year. I did end up reading 50 books, which is, I'm still like honestly really impressed that I was able to read that much, because I remember like actively hating everything I read. So you know what? Go Jordan. She did like some things that year. Some of the books I liked that year were The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, Beach Read by Emily Henry, The Simple Wild, Tweet Cute. Not a great like list here, but I did have wins. And then 2021 happens. Made a lot of life changes, a lot of very big life changes at the end of 2020 and into early 2021 that were really good for me. But then I needed to like rediscover like me as a person. So like I tried to stay in the thick of things. I changed to recent reads from monthly wrap-ups because at the end of 2020, I wasn't posting monthly wrap-ups. They were like quarterly wrap-ups. So I switched to recent reads. That became really hard for me to track of when I was due to post them and wrap things up because I had to then like pay attention to when I had read 5 books. So that did not work very well for me. I posted some of those. I posted my BookNut Fest vlog from 2019 2 years later. Did go to BookNut Fest in 2021, but it was canceled and we just used it more as like a friends trip to, find joy. And then it was Christmas. That's about what I did. I posted 4 recent reads. I posted a vlog from 2 years earlier, and then it was Christmas. I did find a good balance outside of the internet. Like I was finally crawling out of my holes of depression. I was feeling more like a human. I was finding joy in life, which was great. And I needed to keep doing that for several more years before I was able to come back and try to do this again. But I still kept trying. Even though it would have been better for me to just take a break, I kept trying. At the end of 2021, I did post a disappointing and surprising reads lists because I was committed that I was going to stick to this even though I had posted nothing throughout the year. So in 2021, I ended up reading 32 books. So not great, but I did still read, and I did give up entirely on favorites lists that year. Had, like I mentioned, a best books of the year list, or like a most surprising books list, but it was not favorites. It was just books that I thought were better than terrible. Because I'm still struggling with like, what do I like? What does this new version of Jordan, because I've burned my past lives, Taylor Swift, pun intended. So then in 2022, I tried again to film some things. I posted 2 videos that year that were related to 2022 and not 2021. I posted 2 recent read videos. And that's all I posted. I ghosted after that. And I did only read like 20 books that year. And that's also where I gave up completely. In July of that year, I stopped reading books. I was like, nothing is good. Everything is bad. I hate everything. And I'm not even going to rate books anymore because maybe I don't enjoy the act of critically thinking while reading and always having to think about what I'm going to give a book for like a star rating. Like I just felt very confined by this whole system that I was a part of and very like constrained by what I was allowed to do and what I wasn't allowed to do and how I had to think about books and how I didn't have to think about books. And I didn't even know if I liked books anymore. So I just said, forget the whole thing. And I stopped reading books. 2023 came around and I tried again to get back into reading and posting in January of that year. So I posted 2 reading vlogs because I thought surely if I do Sarah J. Maas inspired things, it will be fun again. I will enjoy this again. So I did 2 reading vlogs for Sarah J. Maas, and then that is all I did. I actually don't even know if those were in 2023. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. She has jokes. 2023, I did not post a single video. So I gave up ratings in 2022. And then in 2023, I gave up YouTube. I did film 1 video in 2023 that I did not post until 2024. I posted that, and then I posted 2 reading vlogs for Sarah J. Maas in 2024. I thought, surely I'm going to come back. This is it. We're going to actually do it this year. And I was just still struggling with reading so much. So in 2023, I read 22 books, and I, again, couldn't tell you what my favorites were. From 2021, 2022, or 2023, I could not tell you what my favorite books were because I don't even know if I had any. I just I was reading for book club. That was nearly the extent of my reading because I wanted to participate in book club still, and I wanted to still see my friends and talk to my friends. So that's like the only reason that I kept reading. And then in 2024, I posted a handful of things. I tried again with the recent reads and I posted 2 of those. One of them was earlier this month. And then I went to BookNet Fest again. I hadn't been there since 2019 because of the pandemic. Went there, I vlogged it. I was so uncomfortable vlogging in public. I hadn't done it in so long and I really didn't, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then the landscape of the book online community had changed so much since I was last there. TikTok was like the thing people were using at this convention. It was like the platform. YouTube was like this obsolete granny that nobody did anymore. And I didn't know a single person other than the hosts who were my friends. I was like, I don't recognize anybody here because I don't follow book talk content. I don't know any book talkers. So I was like way out of my element. And I was like, do I still belong here anymore? I don't even know. Do you still want me here? Am I still invited? So like that was like a really humbling and also reinvigorating experience. Also dabbled into some Taylor Swift content in 2024. I posted a reaction to her newest album, and I also posted some reactions to the tour, because that's what 2023 and 2024 was for me. It was Taylor Swift, and I needed to like have somewhere to talk about it in a long form content. That brings us to the end of 2024. I read 20 books last year. I don't have any favorites for you. Maybe I'll put on the screen, or maybe I have been putting on the screen some standouts that I had that year, even if I struggled through that year. Looking at my ratings from the last 10 years, my worst, well, I guess you could say 2023 because I didn't rate a single book that year. So my rating is NA, it doesn't exist. 2015 was actually the worst year I had. I had a 2.5 rating. I did not read a lot of things that I enjoyed. I was still figuring out what I liked for myself at that time and what kind of books I needed to like steer. I was wading through the waters. When you first join BookTube, there's so many things that you're introduced to that you've never heard of before or hadn't had time to read that everybody else has, and you want to just be able to engage in the conversation around those books. So you start reading a lot of things that like you wouldn't necessarily pick up on your own, and that landed me with a 2.5. But then I had like a good string of years. I had a 3.4, 3.6. 2017 was just, and 2018 were just good reading years. I think the one for 2022 is skewed quite a lot. It says it was a 3.4, but I didn't rate a quarter of the books. Like I gave up on rating in July. I apparently only read 5 books after July, and I didn't rate any of those. And then 2024, it says my rating was a 5.1, which seems very incorrect. So I don't really know that I would trust. Like the sample size is so much smaller in the last couple of years in comparison to the first several years that I wouldn't take that as like, oh, 2024 was the best reading year Jordan has had. Numbers wise here, 2018 and 2019 were great years. I read 62 and 67 books respectively, and I had 3.7 and a 3.5 respectively. So like those were like the standout years for my reading and for finding things that I really liked. Like I think I had really narrowed into a niche that I was enjoying, and I kind of knew what I wanted to read and what I liked. The couple of years before that, I feel like my content was doing a lot better. Moving into 2025 though, I feel a lot better about reading and prioritizing reading in my free time. I'm trying to repair my relationship with the internet and TikTok and spending my time doom scrolling to a point where it is causing detrimental, sanity to myself, and trying to navigate having a hobby online that I can do in a very healthy way that doesn't feed into the issues of me doom scrolling. I have a lot of really fun ideas. I have a lot of I'm still passionate about this hobby, and I still love this community, and I still love being here. And so I'm definitely trying to prioritize making choices to support that rather than making choices that don't support that, which is something that I have been working on and learning. And it's a continual process. It is a journey of growth. Thank you so much for spending the last 10 years with me. I really appreciate everybody that was here 10 years ago and is still here now, or anyone that I have picked up along the way. I really appreciate that you step into this little corner of the internet with me. I know there's a lot of places that you can choose to spend your time, so I'm always happy when you choose to spend your time with me. I'm looking forward to what the next year and several years have in store. And if you'd like to follow me anywhere else online, my Instagram, and this is actually Blue Sky. There's just not a logo available to change it to Blue Sky. But if you want to follow me on Instagram or Blue Sky, you absolutely can. I would love to chat with you in the comments and chat with you anywhere else. Thank you guys so much for being here and for celebrating 10 years with me. It means the world to me. And until next time, I will talk to you guys very soon. Bye.